Good afternoon. My name is Eric Arnol-Martin. I spoke at a city council meeting a few months ago, and I just wanted to clarify my position against the bike lane implementations we've seen in several parts of the city. Several people think that I'm against bike lanes in general, but I'm not. I'm a lifelong cyclist myself, and I'm against the way these bike lanes have been implemented. The city only sought input from a small number of people. I was never asked if I'd be okay with converting existing car lanes into bike lanes, and I routinely drive on roads that have been affected by these bike lane changes. A poll should have been conducted to find out if people wanted to lose existing car lanes to bike lanes. Rather than engage with its citizens, the city administration rushed these plans through without asking us about it, most likely because they knew the majority of people wouldn't support it. As a result, our already overcrowded commute is less pleasant than ever. We have fewer car lanes as they have been confiscated for use by cyclists only, who are a tiny minority on our roads. The ratio of car drivers to bike riders is probably 100 to 1. Should we make changes that negatively impact a large majority to help a small minority? I don't think so. Some council members and the representative from the mayor's office have made the analogy of cars replacing horses and buggies being similar to bikes replacing cars. Cars replaced buggies and horses because they were a better mode of transportation. Bikes are not better than cars, and this city and its roads were designed primarily for cars. Several people online have also argued that bike lanes attract young professionals to downtown areas. As a young professional myself, an independent software engineer, I can tell you that these bike lanes make me want to stay away from downtown and other impacted areas due to the increased congestion. Bike riders can use the back roads, sidewalks, share the roads when they need to, and ride on recreational trails, which is what I do when I ride. However, I avoid busy roads, as they are too dangerous even with bike lanes. Many people have already been hit or run over in bike lanes on busy roads that are shared with cars. If the city would like bike lanes, build dedicated infrastructure away from the roads and give us back our car lanes that we've paid for. We pay taxes for these roads, and as such, we should get to vote on such an important issue that has negatively impacted far more drivers than it has bike riders, than it has helped bike riders. A poll should be taken, and we should get a say on future issues that are going to negatively impact a large majority of people. There are better ways to implement bike lanes than confiscating lanes from our existing roads. If the city can't come up with a good solution to a problem, I'd rather see the city do nothing as opposed to making things worse. And for drivers, it is worse now than it was before. So I'd like to see our car lanes restored. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Stephen Winchell, and if you don't mind, I may ask you not to applaud just to keep it moving along. Stephen Winchell.
Good afternoon, City Council. Sorry, I'll adjust this a little bit. My name is Stephen Winchell. I'm a Colorado Springs native, and I've been a fairly avid cyclist for about 8 years now in the city. I also wanted to speak about safety and bike lanes with you today. I would agree with some of what Eric said, that I think right now the bike lanes are really unsafe and difficult for both cyclists and drivers as well. I've actually, unfortunately, been, while abiding with Colorado Springs traffic laws, caused 8 different bicycle accidents by vehicles in my life. So I can definitely speak towards, excuse me, I'm rather nervous, but having my life feel somewhat threatened and just not feeling very safe. So I think we have a really wonderful trail system here in Colorado Springs, and I usually try to use that as much as possible when I'm making my commute to work. But I would really advocate that we clearly mark bike lanes somewhere that are off of the streets such as Cascade, and also to potentially have them marked all the way through the intersection, because the majority of these accidents that I was involved in was because cars were taking a right-hand turn and not observing cyclists coming on their right. That was 6 of the ones, and a couple of them were close to life-threatening for me if I hadn't have reacted as quickly as I did. And like I said, that was abiding by the laws. And I understand that it's difficult to see cyclists coming. So I think that even something like that could be budgeted for and could be a simple solution to just at least have the bike lanes clearly marked all the way through the intersection, even where the bike lanes currently exist. But also to potentially move bike lanes to a street with a little bit less traffic somewhere along the side of like Weber. And also to focus a little bit more on areas similar, I believe it's next to Pikes Peak, I believe it's Pikes Peak and Wasatch, where the bike lanes are running inside of parallel parking, because there's also, whenever a car or someone with a parked car opens their door, I'm forced into traffic, and that's really nobody's fault, I don't believe. I'm not trying to blame drivers for not being able to react in time, but that will push cyclists outside of the bike lane. And generally, it was already brought up today that we're a very fit and active city. We've talked about cardiac arrest, and I think that exercise is a really wonderful thing that we have the ability to do here. And so I'm really just advocating that we find a way that even if it has to push cyclists further outside of downtown, something that's really safe and clearly marked so that we're not polarized between drivers and cyclists in the city, and that I can feel safe getting to work, even if I have to go outside of my way. But thank you very much for your time and for your support in all of your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Shirley Cannon.
If I could beg your indulgence, I'm a retired teacher. Can I give you some cues?
Sure.
Can I post them on the wall and then it'll go quicker?
Well,
It won't hurt them. I know about
okay,
walkers.
okay.
Thank you.
You
You
wanna-
won't lose track? I won't lose track.
Okay.
I hope that's big enough to read.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to cover two particular subjects. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
I'm going to cover two particular subjects with regard to bike lanes. In the meetings I've attended and the times I've visited in person with Ms. Krager, safety seemed to be the watchword. I was told safety is our highest priority, but if you drive the roads and you live on the roads, I think the opposite is true. I'm particularly concerned about emergency vehicles and how they are delayed often by the bike lanes where roads have been reduced, or as they call them, road dieting. I watched an ambulance stalled in an intersection trying to make a turn down a bike lane road that had been reduced to one lane of traffic on each side. I stood there in awe, lights blaring, sirens roaring, and it was stopped dead in the intersection. There was a car blocking it. In the driving lane, the car was blocked, it could not move. No shoulder, no way to go forward. Someone was trying to parallel park. They didn't know how. I went, oh dear God, I wonder who's being delayed with this service. And I thought, precious minutes to whoever was expecting that ambulance. I called the fire department and said, how do you feel about the bike lanes? They said, we don't like them because it's very difficult to make a turn where the roads have been reduced. That's pretty obvious by some of the pictures where the buffer bars are bent and the poles are broken, and they've been that way forever. I live downtown. I don't think any of them have been replaced. I think it's dangerous, and we need to be aware. I'm particularly concerned on the safety issue with regard to an answer I received from the ATAC department. That's a group, do y'all know ATAC? Yes, no, they report back to the mayor with regard to what citizens are concerned about.
Transportation Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I asked them about this safety problem, and they said, well, we're going to collect data for 3 years in terms of how many fatalities have happened with regard to the bike lanes. And I just gasped. I said, how will you count fatalities? Will you count the fatality of the person who didn't get the ambulance in time, the person who didn't get the fire truck in time? Will you count fatalities of the confusion that creates accidents at every intersection already referred to, where bike lanes and roads braid? Or will you just count fatalities of bicyclists? The response was, we haven't thought that far. I'm not happy with any of that. I wonder if their actions meet their words. Is my time up?
Yes, unfortunately, we gave you a little extra time to hang the signs.
Let me close by saying, please don't tell us that our opinions don't count. I was told that by Ms. Krager, eye to eye. I asked her how many names on a petition would it take to reverse this. She said, we don't care what the public thinks. I wrote it down. Our opinions do count. It's our lives that are being endangered and our tax dollars that are being spent.
Thank you, Shirley.
We will be watching.
Thank you, Shirley. Rose Porter.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
We have been asked to believe that if we build it, they will come. And it's just not happening. It's a feeble excuse that is being used to waste the taxpayers' money on these bike lanes. We've pointed out many, many times, and most of you have been there, that there aren't many people using these bike lanes. To our knowledge, the city hasn't even tried to get an accurate measurement of how many bicycles are using lanes. I was at the same meeting that the previous speaker was at, and they were trying to figure out that, and they have installed permanent counters. The only one that was working, and the only one whose count they would allow, is under the bridge south of Dorchester Park, in an area where the bicycle traffic are the folks on their bicycles to the Mission to get their food and then back to Dorchester Park. Instead of data, the response that there are plenty of people using the lanes is all we got. The city has yet to present us with any data. How many? According to a 2017 census, across the nation, 0.6% of the commuters commute by bikes. In Colorado Springs, it's only 0.3%. But even in cities known for friendliness to bikers, like Seattle, are finding that their ridership is going way down. Last year, Bicycling.com voted Seattle the #1 biking city in the nation. How many commute by bike in Seattle? Less than 3.5%. And now, in the last year, they're getting, here it is. They have hit a 10-year low in use of their already established infrastructure. In fact, across the country, bike commuting has been down the last several years, as is noted in the information that I've shared with you. We may see some small increases in cyclists, when the weather improves. There is no reason to believe that will be substantial or long-lasting. What we do know, based on statistics for our city last year, pedestrian and bicycle deaths hit a record. I think we hit 49. More bicycles and car accidents are very likely due to increased traffic, fewer lanes, confusing striping, and growing population. And let us also be honest about the motivation for road narrowing on Cascade. It is CC that wants this. They have for years tried to block the local citizens from driving through campus. Meanwhile, a few weeks ago, the SOS North End presented data showing traffic moved from Cascade to Nevada, further burdening a roadway that's already more use than Cascade.
Rose, could you wrap up?
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
done. I'm
Okay.
just saying, none of this makes sense. None of it.
Okay, thank
Thank
you. Yeah, Shirley, would you mind taking your signs down? Okay. And then Nicole Grant is next.
Thought you saw them as art.
Yay. That's art that I would do, but not anybody else. Nicole?
My name is Nicole Grant. I have never spoken to City Council before, but I am a resident of the Patty Jewett neighborhood area. I also own a small business northeast of the dog track. In the past few weeks, I personally have spoken with nearly all of my neighbors, my coworkers, and customers, all of whom state an increasingly hostile opinion towards these bike lanes. The complaints range from increased fuel expenses, doubled commuting times. Some complained of missing work. Some people even complained that their small businesses are experiencing income loss due to diverting traffic backups, and severe congestion. In my area specifically, I and my neighbors have been exposed to a heavy increase in diverting traffic, resulting in more accidents, increased police activity, and property damage due to commuters trying to avoid the dieted areas. City Council has continued to imply that most people wanted or want this road dieting. In the Gazette article dated 5/19, Ms. Gabler quoted, "It is disappointing that a few neighbors are fighting the will of the majority." We'd like to know, who is this majority? Who are these people? During the 10/9 City Council meeting, Mr. Green told Ed Snyder that the same number of people or more support the road narrowing and the new bike lanes. Where are these stats? Who are these or more people? Even during the 12/11 City Council meeting, when we tried to make the point that we residents feel strongly that most people are actually against the way the bike lanes have happened, the road dieting, Ms. Gabriel responded to the feedback with a blatant dismissal, non-answer of a lot of people support bike lanes, some don't. You can't say a lot. What does that even mean? We residents of this community find that these statements and the objections to address our demands regarding these roads are hollow, self-serving, and detrimental to our infrastructure. We ask that you please respect our frustrations and honestly address these lane issues, conducting an honest poll, adequately addressing all the issues resulting from the lane dieting, and effectively measure the actual public view on this so that we can all come to a good solution. I'm not against bike lanes. I'm not against biking. I'm against it taking an hour to drive across town of 7 miles. I'm against sitting in traffic for 2 hours, letting all of our pollution just rise up into our atmosphere because we can't go anywhere. I'm opposed to people driving up and down my alleyway because they're trying to avoid the streets that have been dismantled. Our roads are falling apart. We've got things that we should be spending our money on before we are doing all these decorative bike lanes. We would really like an honest poll. We'd like this to be honestly addressed, and we'd like it to really be honestly handled.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. And Bill, you wanted to comment?
Let me address an issue that several times I brought up to the Chief of Staff and the Mayor's office, and I thought that this was being done through Ms. Krager's office. Now, is it true what she's saying? There's only one metering system on any one of these? I thought that there were some on Cascade and some on some of these other locations, so you could report back to us about the actual flow of bicycles.
Mr. Murray, I can't attest if those mechanisms are working or not. What I can do is have the Public Works Director, who is the acting traffic engineer at this point in time, answer any specific questions you may have.
Okay, so that might be good to do that offline. I don't see him here now, so, okay. All right, Ed Snyder.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to address you. As you can just see, I imagine, and we have seen in past council meetings, this issue isn't going away. And I think Mr. Murray's statement kind of encapsulates a lot of how people feel. You were supposed to be reported back to. We felt like we were supposed to be reported back to. When we started this brouhaha right after the lane road narrowing went into place, Ms. Gabler had said there were more people for it than against it. Same meeting you mentioned that there was at least as many people for it as against it. In subsequent requests for that data, we've gotten nothing back. So we've talked, Mr. Green and I have talked about doing a poll. You said the mayor liked polls. I'm all for polls, but in all the subsequent meetings we've had with a number of the council members, when we've approached that idea, we've been told it couldn't be done. And as a matter of fact, in my understanding, in one of the non-public meetings, the mayor's railed against the idea of a poll. I don't see why that would be such a bad thing if we understood how people said it. As we've said before, if we're wrong about this, if the vast majority of people aren't against road narrowing, we will shut up and go away. And the easy way to find that out is to do a poll. And yet, now we're hearing the council's opposed to it. And then we're also hearing, oh, well, this is an administrative issue and there's nothing we can do about it. But as Mr. Strand said last time, you have the mayor's ear. You've talked about council's important to the mayor. You have input to it. And that same idea that you don't have any control over it hasn't stopped Ms. Gabler from advocating heavily for more bike lanes or denigrating people in the press who don't agree with her on the side of the bikes. I'm not against bike. I'm all for bike lanes. I want to do more bike trails. I'm talking about people feeling like their input counts, that master plans that were crafted with the citizenry aren't just disregarded because the mayor already said it's an administrative thing. We can do whatever we want. This isn't going away, guys, because the people that you govern don't like it, and a large number of don't like it. We don't even solicit. People come out to us. We set up a website, Restored Out Roads. People come to us about it. They're really irritated about it. So it isn't something that they're going to get over and that's going to go away, and it's going to continue to increase in intensity until at least you hear like our concerns are being heard and addressed legitimately. And if you keep doing what you're doing, and you're free to do it, I understand politics, it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. So I would just urge council, to the extent you can, to talk to the new traffic engineer, whoever that is, and maybe just sit down and have some real one-on-ones. Don't railroad us into these goofball meetings where you pretend not to do road narrowing. At the last minute, you say, let's do road narrowing. Really, all you have to do is talk to people. You can't, there's no perfect solution. We're not going to get something that, the people who don't want any road narrowing and bicycle, they're not going to be happy. And everybody wants a bicycle in on every street's not going to be happy. That's not the point. The compromise that will keep most people happy, your constituents happy, is something that can be achieved, I think, if we all just work together instead of being railroaded. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Schwerin.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Jim Schwerin. I was Parks Board member for 6 years and chairman of the board for 3. Some of you may remember me from there. I am a cyclist. I also own 4 cars. I pay my proportionate share, and I'm sure most cyclists own cars and pay their proportionate share of taxes too. I am, of course, here in support of bike lanes in the city. It's certainly a challenge trying to integrate bike lanes into existing infrastructure, and I believe the city is trying its best. It is definitely a safety issue for cyclists. It's sometimes very scary being on a road without bike lanes, and we all know that anytime a bicycle meets a car accidentally, the bicyclist is going to lose, no matter what. I would point out that several years ago, Cheyenne Boulevard, where I live, was narrowed from 4 lanes to 2 in order to put in bike lanes on both sides. And the same thing happened on Tejon Street. And frankly, at the time, I was a little inconvenienced, and it might take a few more minutes to get to where I'm going, but I really, really appreciate those bike lanes. They are a fantastic addition and provide a lot of space and a lot of room, and I would suspect that the incidence of accidents has gone way down on those streets. And I just want you to know that I also do a lot of volunteer work with bike groups in town, and I'm pretty sure that all the cyclists in town are supportive of all the efforts that the city's putting forward. There are some challenges, and there might need to be a few changes, but we'd like you to move forward and keep going. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Shelley, come on up. Shelley Jensen.
Actually, I just come here to learn about something else, but feel provoked to speak about this. I live in the Old North End as well, and somewhat near Cascade, and I really appreciate the bike lanes, and there's 2 reasons why. If you live west of Cascade, the children walk to Steele Elementary School, and there aren't any walking guards to Steele until you hit Nevada. And most parents monitor that, but the speeds on Cascade have dramatically decreased. Prior to the bike lanes being put in, we were having rollover traffic accidents at the corner of Fontanero and Cascade almost monthly. It was ridiculous. My neighbor actually used to live on that corner and moved because while she was pregnant, a car flew up on her front yard while she was sitting on her front porch. So I think that a number of different implementations always have issues, but after seeing what I've seen, maybe we just need education on the bike lanes so that people know that the speed limit now is 30 and that they can't pass in the bike lanes. And one of the gentlemen suggested that maybe we need different signage on those. Maybe there's color or a public address, but I really do appreciate the bike lanes.
Great, thank you, Shelley. Bill? Did you...
Listening to everyone discuss these issues, again, we're coming back to opportunity costs, and there's a lot of compromise I see in all our conversations. I personally am scared to death going across the bridge in Bijou, approaching Cascade, both directions. that I wince. First of all, that there's a bike there, for heaven's sake, when I'm making a right turn by the library. I mean, there's so much room for error. I don't want to hurt anybody, okay? But that looks like an accident happening. And then where they're building the hotel there on the other corner, I mean, I have actually hunkered down watching bikes and cars run through an intersection, and the guy's right. We should take those lanes across so people understand that is a bike lane, and to be more perceptive about it. And then a week doesn't go by, I don't sit there and watch cars weave on Cascade trying to figure out whether or not they can make a right turn or whether this is a real lane or what it is. And the whole time I see these poor people in bicycles really in the middle of the road. And so I'm conflicted, but I think there's a lot of compromise. And taking them off any arterial of any kind, I think is the smartest way to look at it. So let's talk about smart. Let's talk about compromise. Let's sit everybody down. Let's get the data, okay, and look at it from a more information data-driven aspect. I think we can all benefit from that and be benefit for the entire community. Thank you.
All right, Corey, are you here? Corey Stula? Corey?
Thank you, honorable council members, Mr. President, Chief Green, and staff. Thanks for the chance to address you. Well, first of all, I'm a volunteer with Bike Colorado Springs, so we're a bicycle advocacy group here in town. I really want to take a chance to thank you for your leadership during this really tough time, and I think we've heard some good points brought up really on both sides, and I'm looking forward to your leadership as we try to work through this. I want to thank you for supporting processes like ATAC and CTAB and the extensive public processes that were used to create the Bike Master Plan and the Comprehensive Plan, both of which were passed by this body 9-0, and really look forward to moving ahead to provide transportation options for people, not to force anyone to use any form of transportation. That they should be able to use any form that they want. So thank you very much for sticking with us through these difficult conversations.
Thank you, Corey. Anybody else want to speak in front of council? I think you already did, Gerald, sorry. Come on, Jamin.
Yes, thank you for letting me speak. I actually didn't intend to speak, but as I heard this discussion over the bike lanes, I felt compelled. I'm not actually intending to weigh in on the bike lanes themselves. I don't bike often. I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of the bike lanes. When they first appeared, it caused some confusion among me as well. But what I'm actually, and I do believe that the citizens deserve the data that they are requesting, and I hope that we can get that to them. But what I would like to do is echo some of David's comments when Kathleen was being recognized. Sometimes recognition is pervasive. Our intent and our desires are lost in people's frustrations or anger. So I just wanted to recognize, I understand this has been a passion project of Gabler's. I've heard her speak on it many times, and I want you to know that the intent of whether or not it's successful, whether or not it is actually only served to heighten the problems, as has been illustrated or suggested by some of the people, your intent was not lost. I see that you desired a healthier, cleaner, better city. And I just want you to understand that is not what I feel is questioned here. It's just whether or not it's working. So that still needs to be evaluated and observed and determined by this council and other bodies. But I just want to state personally that I understand what you intended for your city was something very noble. And I just want you to understand that we know that. Okay?
Thank you, Jamin. Appreciate that. All right. Anybody else want to speak? If not, I think that's a good note to end on, and let's move on to